Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh.
On the show today, Lauren Beale and Brooke McNamara, who was on the show ages ago as well. They are interdisciplinary, there's a long word, performance artists, poets, Zen sitters, general lovely human beings. We actually did this interview once before, but something went wrong with the sound. And I thought, you know what? I quite like talking to these people. Let's just do it again. So, ladies, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be back.
Yeah, round two. I love it.
Let's do it. This is my Friday night, and I don't mind for you two. So, let's just have a brief version of how you got interested in the body. So, Lauren and then Brooke, brief version of like your life journey with the body.
To the body. I I was thinking back to last time when you asked this question. It's such an awesome question. Your journey to the body. I mean, where does it begin? But for me, I just certainly felt intuitively from as long as I can remember that to be so deeply present in the body, that's how I knew the world. It was from my sensations and pre and post language. Words seemed to not always serve the intricacy and the intimacy of what I felt and how I felt. So the body always felt the most interesting lens and territory to dive into and know who I was and to express from. And then I just deeply felt like that's how I wanted people to know me, that I could express most clearly who I was through movement and through dance and through those forms of expression. So that was the beginning, how I found the body.
Great. And can you give us a little bit of sort of geography and sort of main professional trainings as well?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up studying dance. I grew up studying dance and also playing softball. So I have like a sporty athleticism, competitive edge to my movement training and also and performing arts. So this sort of artistry and more interpretive lens of movement. Those two things really coalesced for me growing up. And then I had to choose, which pissed me off, but nonetheless, I moved more towards the performing arts, and I got both my Bachelor of Fine Arts and Master of Fine Arts in dance, the kind of the realm of dance and scholarly theory, and then pedagogy and interdisciplinary domain of what it meant to dance, what that meant on like a big, wider and wider spectrum. That's where I met Brooke, was our master's training at the University of Colorado.
Romance began.
And there it started.
The rest is history.
And just for listeners, a lot of listeners won't know what softball is. So it's basically like baseball, but with a bigger ball, so you can.
That's right. The bigger ball. Yeah, there's more. Yeah, there's more ball.
I was at the University of Chicago for a bit, and back in my drinking days, someone said this is a sport you can play while drinking. I was just utterly enamored by that idea.
I love it.
Softball. Yeah, okay, Brooke, your turn. This body thing. How did you get interested in it?
Well, just like you two, I was born with a body, born in a body as a body, and I realized early on that I just had a lot of fear in my body. I was such a shy little girl and very quiet and very withdrawn, and felt a lot of nervousness and overwhelmed by like, what is this world? What are humans doing? Especially adults, they're so serious. What is happening and how am I going to make it here? And then when I was 2, I walked up to my mom, rolling my stomach almost like a belly dancer, and I was up on my toes, and I said, "I'm a ballerina." And I was like very serious and I meant it. And I don't know if that was a past life thing or like just some knowing. So she put me in classes, and I studied ballet for a long time till I like became curvy, like didn't have the right body for it, and then hurt my back. And then I reluctantly started modern dance because you can kind of get away with having a curvier body as a modern dancer. But eventually I fell in love with the wider range of expression in allowed and encouraged through modern dance. And then I remember there was a specific turning point in high school where I was just so absolutely sure that I had to pursue dance as far as I possibly could go, which meant like I absolutely wanted to do it professionally, but also whatever was even beyond that. So I danced in San Francisco in my 20s professionally, and then at a certain point, I tried to quit. I moved to Boulder to quit dancing.
You tried to quit. I like this. You said it's like a drug habit. I tried to quit. So they call that doing a geographical in addiction circles.
Totally. That's exactly what it was. I couldn't stay in San Francisco because of my great love for the people I had danced with there for my whole 20s. So I did a geographical to Boulder, and I decided I was just going to be a life coach. And that lasted for 6 months. And then I remember I was on an airplane listening to music, and I started feeling these really deep, really passionate emotions bubbling up my core. And I remember I started crying, and I looked at my partner at the time and I said, I'm not done dancing.
You realize that life coaches were losers, and you were deep down, you were a deep and neurotic dancer, and there was nothing you could do about it. Like,
exactly.
I get it. This is just who I am. There's nothing that can be done. So you two aren't just the two, are you? I know this because I've interviewed you before. You have a group name.
Yeah.
A shared collective name. So could I speak to?
Yes, we have a band name, and her name, it's both a shared identity because we've been working together so long. We have this way of working that sort of like feels like an interbeing or like a shared way. And then it's also the name of our organization through which we teach and perform. And it's Eunice, EUNICE, which in Greek means victorious and also like full of integrity, like very trustable.
I'm slightly taking the piss, but this is also a really interesting notion that I think anyone that's sort of married, for example, or has a long-term business partner can understand that, yes, there's you and yes, there's me, but there's also us, and it can have that quality of its being its own entity, can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a Venn diagram where there's definitely Lauren and there's definitely Brooke, but there's a place where we overlap, and that's a real shared mysterious thing.
Yeah. And I feel, something about the way in which we collided inside of grad school. We both, Brooke almost quit, and I had just had my first child. So that there was this kind of destruction and utter I don't know, the sort of neurosis of dance as we knew it had the sort of contours of that had fallen away, and we didn't really know what we were going to do and how to do it. And the ego ambition of being a dancer in the world, she went to the West Coast, I went to the East Coast, we did that. It didn't make enough sense. And so when we drew together, we were just so interested in our ego bruises and the ways in which we wanted to continue to subvert the ego. So we've started collaborating as a continual practice of subverting and destroying our individual egos in the process of creating together.
So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you actually do then. So I've seen one of your shows. We're going to talk about that one, but let's hear it for the listeners. Like, why would embodiment people be interested in your collaborations?
Yeah.
Well, I would say whenever we describe our work, we are always looking for creating a living experience for the audience. So an experience where they actually go for a ride. It's, and we really are interested in audience participation, but not in like a hokey way or like a, I don't know, when I'm in an audience, I don't enjoy being forced to do stuff, but we look for subtler ways to get them to participate on subtler levels, psychologically, or, this word is weird, but energetically, like ways to pull them in so they're participating and they can't help but relate it to their life. So for example, our first piece ever, when there was a moment when I realized that Lauren was my quote unquote collaboration crush. I saw her do a showing in our choreography class and I laughed and cried. And for me, that's when I'm sold in art, is if someone can make me laugh and cry, I just will be yours forever. So we went out for beer the next night and I said, you're my collaboration crush. I want to work with you. And she said, okay, let's just start making stuff together. So any chance we got in classes, we just started making stuff together. And all of that material got funneled into what became our MFA thesis project, which was an hour-long show, which, Mark, you saw a 30-minute version of 8 years later. But it was called Choose One. And so we took this bit of competitive energy between us, and also that we're aware is between many dancers, although it's not explicit, it's under the surface. And we said, what if we made that underground thing that people often try to pretend is not there, or maybe we can just say that we pretend is not there. What if we make that the actual object of our piece? And so late night in the grad student office, we looked at each other and said, what if this piece was all about the audience choosing between us?
And people literally have to choose, don't they, at the end?
Literally.
They have to vote.
They have to vote, and one of us has to leave, and one of us gets to stay.
Yeah.
And we started like laughing nervously and just knew that that's what we had to do. So
yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, it seems to me this is a critical aspect of a lot of, I think, particularly female relationships that I've seen, of brutal competition, but that's often under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see it in dancers, I see it in yoga teachers, I see it just in terms of beauty and romantic kind of aspects. And you kind of brought that often hiddenness right to the fore with the show.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when Brooke says that was her in terms of a collaborative crush, my in towards her was I wanted to crush her. She was magnetic.
I had a crush on her and she wanted to crush me.
I have to admit the fact that I have such deep competitive edge to me, and she was so captivating and alluring and charming and magnetic. And I knew that it was like, keep your enemies closer. There's that feeling of like, oh, shoot, I have to get closer to her so that I know what she's up to. It's like sniffing her out and feeling her out. But I, so when we came together, we tried to talk about making, quote unquote, making something, like, oh, what are you interested in? And, what are you feeling these days? And all the content that we could talk about abstractly didn't make any sense, because what we were feeling under the surface was this deep attraction and deep competition for each other. And once we finally got over ourselves and just recognized what was actually present, we realized that, like Brooke was saying, oh, that's the object, that's the content that we need to be creating from, is actually what is truly happening between us.
And if I can just add that, Lauren was saying we're at this point in our dance explorations where we had, what felt like pretty satisfying performing careers in San Francisco and New York. So at this point, it felt, I think after having Lauren having her first child, and for me, definitely after having my kids, but just where we were then, it felt like if it wasn't worth the energy, time, attention, effort to put together a show that takes so much. We didn't have it in us to put all that into it unless the content was actually going to transform us from the inside out and actually matter to the people that were watching. It just wasn't worth it to go through the motions anymore. Not that we had been going through the motions,
or actually feel real and relevant to what we were experiencing inside of our own lives. So that became kind of our the center of our investigation was always what is really happening between us, inside of our ecosystems that we're in,
This is the sort of mindfulness aspect, right? The kind of like actually really being present with what is. And that's not necessarily the basis of art for a lot of people.
Totally. But we just recognized that everything, if we tried to do anything but that, it was lame. It was so disconnected. It was so arbitrary.
It didn't pantomime.
Yeah, it didn't mean anything. But when
that's kind of the case with anything, though, isn't it? Like even podcast, so we have a conversation. It's like, okay, what's really here? That's always going to be the more interesting thing than what is on my agenda. What are the 5 questions I have written down? It's boring. So, so let's open this up a little bit, because it's your particular relationship, which I know you find fascinating, but listeners may or may not. So in terms of, sorry, I hope it doesn't sound too harsh, but in terms of collaboration generally, what have you learned about collaboration through this?
The main thing that I've learned is that there's no methodology that works better than being present and embodied in the moment, which totally relates to this podcast and all of your work, Mark. Is that like to actually feel, like Lauren was just saying, what's really happening in my body between us, and also like what is she really saying and what do I really mean? All of that, if I can stay present and follow where the pulse of wisdom and truth is. I mean, I don't know if those are the right words, but like there's a pulse of what feels like it rings, and sometimes that means Lauren's leading, and sometimes it means I'm leading, and sometimes it means we have to fight a little, or sometimes it means that we're exactly in a flow together. And that's not something, there are like little tools to teach, I guess, but that it's more about training to listen to sensation and surrender the ego, to follow what's alive in the moment, which relates to why we're on the podcast today, because that's the training that we are offering now in creative practice and collaborative creative practice.
We'll get to that. I want to stick with you two a little bit more, because I think there's something generalizable and fascinating in how to do, because everyone's involved may not, many of us aren't making art with someone else, right? That's a pretty unusual thing to do. However, we are in relationships, business partnerships, marriages, and I'm kind of wondering, like, in this kind of intense crucible of performance, what has come out of how to do that? And I'm hearing some good stuff here, like in terms of like really listening to what wants to happen.
Yeah. I feel for me, the collaborative, I think I kind of stumbled upon it. I didn't really intend to be so deeply in collaboration with anybody, but once we've started to engage in this practice, there's something about the intersection and like how we have to surrender and what catalyzes that just can't happen inside of either one of us, that it can only happen by the alchemy of us coming together. So there's something quite extraordinary about that. And there's something about working so intimately with another person. I mean, yes, just like a marriage, but doing something that is really trying to be creative and create, not just making babies, but, a wider range of creativity that gets at the tension. It gets into these wild juxtapositions. It gets into this pulse between life and death. It gets into these, I don't know, like this range of complexity that once we got a taste for it, and maybe I'll just speak personally, once I got a taste of that, like, I don't have to, it encapsulates so much more of who I am through this process, so much more of who Brooke is through this process, and then something absolutely indescribable that can happen between either one of us. And just that, I think, blows my mind every time. And it's terrifying. And it makes us feel like we want to die all the time because of that ego surrendering. But there's something that is just keeps pulling us back.
And there is a death in that, right? Like, what I have to put myself out the way.
Yeah.
Find the emergent thing that exists between both of us.
Yeah, exactly. And then also for me, because I've had to develop my leaderfulness, and like I was saying earlier, my kind of default is more shy, or like, I was also a second child. I tend to enjoy following. So for me, sometimes it feels like if I think I have a good idea and I realize Lauren's got the more juicy thing, and so I need to surrender, that doesn't feel good necessarily. But also for me, it's equally as there's like an equal but different kind of charge when I'm like, no, I know I have the thing, I know, and I have to actually like stand for it. It's training us to stretch in a lot of different ways. And one more thing, just practically speaking, Mark, that you asked, what have we learned about collaboration? Everything that we just said, which is a lot of kind of, I don't know how, I hope that's easy to understand, but in a really grounded sense, we also have rules, which we have these 3 rules that we created in that piece, Choose One. We said, wow, if we're going to compete for the audience's attention on stage and put our friendship through that kind of a ringer, we have to have these rules that we not only perform by, but live by. So we said the rules on stage in this kind of comedic way, but then they ended up kind of guiding the trajectory of the show. And then we would live by them. And they're really simple. It's rule number 1 is I promise to be honest. Rule number 2 is I promise to make this fucking awesome. And rule number 3 is I promise to stay in this with you until the end. And so on stage, we would call each other out because there's always an element of improvisation. There's a lot of it is set, but some is improvised. But off stage too, it brought up so much. And I would say, fuck, like, Lauren, I have promised you that I'll be honest, and I can't rehearse right now until I tell you that I feel like you're being kind of a bitch, or like, if one of us was kind of like pulling away, it's like, you promised to stay in this. Or if one of us was half-assing, no, you promised to make this fucking awesome. Yeah. And so those 3 rules have really shaped, and for anyone who's like an integral person, they're covering like the I and the we and the it. So it's like
nice.
And so those have really helped, it's like ground rules, like anything we're going to do, any transformative container needs a clear intention and ground rules. And that's kind of keeps things together so that they just don't go off the rails.
Yeah. My wife and I have a few similar ones. And was there ever a time when it really put genuine pressure on your friendship? Like this choosing process. I mean, I understand it's about 50-50 currently in terms of who was chosen. But imagine, maybe imagine it wasn't. Imagine it was 80-20. Would you still do it? Or has there ever been a time where you've gone, okay, that really stung tonight, and you won sort of underhandedly, and fuck you?
Oh yeah. Yes. I mean, the show you saw in Hungary was the one I lost. And there was something particular about that, it depends on the context. It's like sometimes we're in the context of friends and family, and sometimes we're in the context, in Hungary, it was like all these like people I was so deeply admiring of and intimidated by, and to be rejected, damn it. In that moment, I had to just walk away, and Brooke we kind of know each other's like rejection styles. So she knows do not approach. Like, don't go after Lauren.
Quick break to tell you about our program. So as well as the podcast, we have various kinds of online training. So we have the Embodied Yoga Principles online training, as well as in-person training. Embodied Yoga Principles for yogis who want to get yoga off the mat, specialize in the psychology of yoga, unique postures. It's a 5-day training. We have one in Brighton, one in Berlin, and one in Austin, Texas. So if you go to Embodied Yoga Principles, you can find them. Also the online version of the training for people who can't make those dates. Excellent courses. The Embodied Yoga Principles training for the yogis. For the coaches and facilitators, we have the Embodied Facilitator course. This is our flagship course. We offer it in Moscow, also in the UK. A 9-month adventure, real deep dive into embodiment. You know, it's the biggest embodiment program I do. It could be like movement people who want to work in business more. We have people like dancers and martial arts teachers come to learn more about working in mainstream settings, but also for coaches and trainers who want something really well structured and want to work on themselves, they want to learn practical tools, learn how to work with the body in facilitation. If you can't make EFC, and it is a big ask, there's an online course we run called the Foundations of Embodiment Certification. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator, you'll find the in-person and then dash FEC, F-E-C, F for Freddy, E-C for Charlie, FEC. You'll come up with the Foundations of Embodiment Certification, and also do one-day events all around the world. So I'm just about to do a tour to Slovenia, Berlin, Copenhagen, Brussels, Amsterdam, and Brighton. The Brighton one is £10, which is like $15. So if you're coming from abroad, that could make that affordable. The Brighton one's always like a really big fun one, so that's coming up. Again, go to the Embodied Facilitator course to see all of these events. And we have a little online evening as well. If people just want a taster, again, that's £10. That's a 3-hour thing coming up as well. Embodiedfacilitator.com, embodiedfacilitator.com, and you'll find all those events, or Embodied Yoga Principles for the yoga ones. Okay, so that's the stuff that I sell. Oh, and the book, the embodiment book. If you want to get my book and learn about embodiment through reading, you can also get the embodiment book available at Amazon and no good bookstores. So there we go. Excuse the interruption, and back to the episode.
I'm going to interrupt. Do you take it as a real rejection then? Like,
oh God, it's undeniable. I mean, the votes come in and you're like, Brooke wins, and you're like, fucking God.
What do people choose on, do you think? I mean, is it like who was more authentic, who is it just boom versus bar? I mean, like what do people choose on? Because the whole point is that that's not specified, right?
Exactly. And we made that explicit. There's a line that says, there are no rules for how you choose, but there are rules for how we play. And then we give our 3 rules. And that's we wanted to put people, have them reflect on their own choosing process. And we did this at a university after we were in Hungary. And some of the university males were like, man, your show really fucked me up, because they were watching their own minds for how they choose between.
Yeah. Because it does expose like, hey, maybe that person's just sort of nice, and I like nice people, or maybe I don't want to affect, I know her husband, and what if he sees me vote for the other person? Or, there's all sorts of, I noticed a lot of that going on.
Totally. Yeah, it's totally a social experiment. And we realized, I mean, we performed this piece anywhere from an hour long to 12 minutes. We've done it out on the street. We've done it in like an opera house. And we finally got hip to the fact that it would be helpful to do a Q&A afterwards. Finally, after 8 years, we started integrating a Q&A because people really want to talk about what it brings up.
Psychotherapy.
Yeah, totally. Some people are mad.
Okay, so you've obviously chosen your mother once again. We should talk about this.
Exactly, yeah. So a woman came up to me afterwards once and said, you remind me of my daughter, so I chose you.
But then her own mother chose me.
Yeah.
So,
And my mom said, I chose Lauren because it's not real anyway. And I said,
you invited your own mother.
Yes, my mother chose
your
Lauren.
best friend. How has this not fucked you up?
We are a little masochistic, but also it's really grown us. And you asked if it had put tension on our friendship, and I would say absolutely yes. And that's why we have such a strong relationship now.
Yeah, well, listeners, we're going to vote on the Facebook group at the end of this podcast. Okay,
Gosh, might as well.
Put Brooke or Lauren will vote on the Facebook group for the Embodiment Podcast at the end of this. It might be a bit hard to know who's who now. Actually, just so people can get the voices. Brooke, can you say hello?
Hello.
Lauren, can you say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so hopefully the listeners have all got the voices there. We've got that down who's who there. I choose on entirely shallow criteria, by the way. So, okay, so collaboration. In what way is your relationship to each other the same and different than to your children? Didn't see that question coming.
Didn't see that question coming.
Editor, leave this uncomfortable silence in.
I know. I thought you were going to ask how it's different and similar to our spouses and partners, but to our children.
This is the British Inquisition. Expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Because I know motherhood's a theme for both of you. I've heard you speak about motherhood before and the service of motherhood and that. You know what?
What just came up for me is this is maybe kind of random, but I'll just get it going. Which is one of the main differences is, with my children, I want to strike a balance between nurturing and challenging them. But there's obviously like a maternal and thoughtful way of doing that. And similar with Lauren, we have a tenderness and a love, and then we have this playful, like banter. Mm-hmm. And I've said to her that, so here's the main difference. I will tease Lauren in a way that I will tease no one else in my life. And I'm not sure why, but I never, ever say the kinds of things to my children that I say to Lauren. And I just will tease her to the point where it just makes her laugh so hard because it's so mean or it's so dark.
I mean, Brooke, the racist jokes you continuously say.
Yeah, hey, no, not like that.
Listeners, I've made that up entirely. Okay, Lauren.
I wish I could give an example, but I can't. But you know what I mean.
No, but you give quite a lot of shit. Generally, I was surprised by that quality you had when I'd only seen sort of you dancing on the internet as this feminine kind of creature, and then you have this sort of boyish piss-taking quality, which I really enjoy, Brooke. So I could imagine when that's going double barrels at poor Lauren. So, Lauren, what about you? Brooke versus your kids. Choose one. Let's not play that game.
God. Yeah, that is an awesome question. I would have to say that, honestly, the way in which Brooke and my relationship has unfolded is kind of one of those things where I look to find wisdom and intelligence for all other relationships that I have. There's something that we are doing that just feels like so real.
Right.
Oh, that's not the right word, but like so raw. And I guess it's the rules. It's like, who doesn't in every relationship want to be honest, fucking awesome, and then know that you're going to stay in it with them until the end, whatever the end means. So I kind of try actually to take those rules into my relationships with both of my children, which I think I appreciate that it gives a wider range of, I don't know if it would be appropriate parental behavior or not, but I think that we have a lot of fun. We play, we cuss, but in an investigative way, it's like we just investigate language, we like play, we get real. I don't know. There's just something that that feels really similar, that kind of busts.
So you have 2 kids.
I have 2 kids. I have a son and a daughter.
If you had to choose one.
If I had to choose one.
Well, I was going to say, while she contemplates which child she would choose if she had to choose, I don't know if you know this, Mark, but we have performed Choose One when Lauren was 8 months pregnant and I had a shaved head because I had just ordained as a Zen monk. So that was an interesting one. They had to choose between a pregnant woman and a bald woman. And then we've performed it when I was pregnant. So we've had all these weird things where the audiences had to choose between children and adults, you know.
Why is this so interesting? Because life is forced choice. Like that's what values are. You wake up in the morning and you go, what am I going to do today?
Yeah.
Am I going to do that or that? Am I going to go to the gym? Am I going to sleep in? Am I going to meditate? Am I going to masturbate? There's always, there's
Big choices.
Yeah.
That's just Stuart Davis's choice, that last one, for the record. And these life is forced choices. So there's an honesty to actually putting that up front.
Oh, and the reason your original question was something about, like, for the listeners, what is our work like? And the reason I even started talking about that piece, Choose One, is because one of our friends at the time, maybe I'll just keep her identity confidential, but she was in a relationship she was in a polyamorous relationship with a man who was dating a friend of hers also. And she had come to the clarity that she didn't want that anymore. She wanted a monogamous relationship. So she had literally the night before said to him, I feel clear, you have to choose one of us. Which one do you want? One of us will stay and one of us will go, basically. And the next day she came to our show and we were on stage saying the same thing and making her make that choice. And she came up to us afterwards and was just like, holy shit, that was the most surreal and like mind-blowing experience, to be experiencing art that was also my life. And so that's always kind of what we're aiming for, is to like ring a bell where people can actually find a pathway into their lived experience and feel stuff and make, like, discover what their values are or what they care about, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've lived that experience as well, actually. Okay, interesting. Maybe this is why I have a deep moral objection to your work as well.
Totally.
By one, do you mean one Ukrainian and one Russian and one French, right? That is what you mean.
Yeah, how big is
sure that's what you meant.
Well, we also have this hidden esoteric spiritual layer of the piece, which is
to choose one.
To choose the oneness that is beyond duality, that is our, and we're never going to say that in our marketing material.
Trojan horse that Zen shit in. I see what you've done there.
It's
oneness.
It's secretly a Buddhist piece. And that, honestly, when you say, like, how did your relationship survive that?
That's the way.
That's how, is we had to keep choosing to identify as the
Right, because it's like, well, I'm you and you're you anyway. We're both faces of consciousness. So if they pick you, it doesn't really matter, because that's also me.
Exactly. And then we had to get feel all the layers of rejection along the way to keep coming back to, like, and this isn't just Zen, it's also like quantum physics. Like, they choose you, they choose me. But that's like it's easy to say that. So this was like a catalyst to really train in can we stay in touch with our true nature that is one and many, and play in our uniqueness and play this game, and also not freak the fuck out or not be friends anymore, because we know that before and after and inside of all of this, we are one, and we are so interdependent that we are not separate. And can we use this piece as a training? Can we tune to that?
Yeah, and just to train a little bit more in terms of that tolerance of rejection, and that tolerance of difference, and that tolerance of bias and preference and choice that is really living us all day in and day out. You choose, like you said, masturbation or meditation. I mean, there's always choices happening that are living you, that are affecting you, impacting you, and they're impacting us. And so to create that training ground, to have greater tolerance and play, not just to survive, and not just to thrive, but like how to get in there and be delighted by it all in some way.
And I'll add that the piece it's actually a funny piece. Like we would laugh so hard we'd be in tears sometimes.
I totally missed the whole Zen oneness thing in the piece. Totally missed that. But now I get it. Now that makes sense. Okay, so let's sort of shift here a little bit then. So you've had this kind of crazy collaboration and intense kind of like spiritually infused ego bruising kind of relationship. But then there's also you're now taking this to other people as well, right? You're doing stuff on how to be creative, how to collaborate now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's true. I think that happened really side by side with our creative activity that landed in or manifested in more of a performance experience. We were equally fascinated by the process in which we were engaging in. That felt almost as self-fulfilling and intriguing as the work we were making. So we just became really curious in the kind of the system and the procedures and the ways in which we would fuck with each other and the different improvisational prompts and the rules and the play with language and just the things that we were engaging within our process to inspire our creativity or inspire our imagination or to keep undermining moments where we got too settled or too fixed or too known inside of any one particular statement, to keep complexifying our work. We got interested in, this is a cool process. I wonder what it would be like to include other people, and I wonder if people would be interested in how we do what we do. So we started to play with that, and we started to create some workshops, embodied interdisciplinary workshops that played a little bit more with everything from movement to writing to interpersonal dialogue to group dynamics to improvisation to visual art. We just started to play inside of these containers and create thematic containers for people to engage in, and as a little extended experiment, and they turned us on. It definitely lit us up to start doing this work with others.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, I think it's worth repeating that this is the art of creativity, which most people might think of as, a lot of people might think of as, something artists do or something maybe children have and you don't really need when you're older. And I made the case that creativity is it's like the heart of what I get paid for as a business person.
Yes.
Having good ideas, and when we did a product launch yesterday and something went wrong, and we had to quickly creatively get it right again. And it's like how to make the conference a success is all about creativity, and being able to be creative repeatedly under pressure.
Totally, exactly.
That is the art of life. And, whether you're a parent going, how the fuck do I keep this little bugger entertained at an airport when I haven't got any colouring books?
Yes.
Or whether it's, me going, okay, how can we do this product launch properly when we screwed it up or whatever? There's a million ways we need to be. How do I keep my love life interesting when I've been
exactly? Yeah.
Years? There's a million ways we need to be creative every day. So this isn't a sort of peripheral middle class skill, is it? It's a core life skill.
This is a life skill.
And I always love the quote by Rollo May that creativity is not the frosting on experience, but the very fountainhead of experience itself. And so it's like you were saying, whatever role you're playing or whoever you are, however you identify, creative practice is simply you being close to source and kind of sniffing at the geyser of where life itself is coming into form. And then when you participate with that, it's enlivening, and then you start to shine. So then other people are like, what are you doing? I want some of that. Mm-hmm. And, for better or worse, we are social animals that have these imaginations, that is a huge responsibility and burden, and untamed, the imagination can just create all kinds of suffering. But when we actively hone it and play with it, it can create worlds, and it can create the thing that's it has
created our world.
It's creating our world in this very moment, and it could be the tool that saves us from climate change or helps us save ourselves from ourselves. Or if we are going down as a species, not to go into this territory too much, but if we are going down, it could help us create beauty and intimacy and integrity along the way. So it is central. And our work is for people who identify as artists, and certainly also for people who don't identify, maybe even more so, that they can get this function rolling inside themselves can change everything.
Yeah, it's so deeply inherent. I mean, just from that quote from Rollo May, it's such it's present inside of all of us. But what we realized was that the more that we practiced collaboratively together, the more available it became, and the more we realized what was blocking it in any given moment, whether that was fear or habituation or just kind of an ignorance to what we were feeling in any given moment, or what were the dynamic range, like you're saying, like when you're sitting in that meeting and something goes wrong, well, what tools do you have at your fingertips to, in that moment under pressure, solve a problem in the way that brings the most aliveness to form and makes it come to life. So that takes training, and it takes time, and to do it collaboratively, and to bump up against each other, and to bump up against a community of people who are equally as curious and interesting. And we've had people from all over the gamut of how you might identify, from comics, comedians to writers, photographers, movers, shakers, people who come and they're like, I don't self-identify as an artist at all, and I don't even know why I'm here, and I don't even know what this is or going to be.
That's what everybody says when they come to our workshops. They say, I don't know what this is, but I know I'm supposed to be here. And then I just absolutely love how radiant and beautiful everyone looks and feels afterwards, because we're tapping into a natural, sustainable resource of inspiration. And I don't know who doesn't want to feel inspired. And inspiration is not something just for special people. It's, like Lauren said, something that can be trained.
Great. I mean, just briefly then, I don't want to make this too much of an advert for you guys. What's the format? Is it like a week? People go away somewhere? Like, gives the practicalities here?
Yeah. Well, currently we are, since we're based here in Boulder, we are leading monthly creative practice labs that are 3-hour-long workshops. So inside of those containers, throughout the year, we really kind of feel into what is happening inside of our world, whether that be in connection to the earth and nature, or inside of our social dynamic, politics, things like what's happening. And we always kind of create a thematic intention. And then inside of each workshop, there's really a pulse between disciplines. So they are deeply embodied, and they include movement, and they include the imagination and visualization. They move from there to writing, from there to personal or interpersonal work and dialogue. They move to trios. They might move to wrestling. They might move to improvising. They might move to sharing inside of the group. They just kind of pulse between disciplines. Mm-hmm. That's like the workshop. But yeah, Brooke, do you want to say, so we're expanding it. We've launched, and we've moved into different domains, different conferences, and been presented in different countries. Like you said, like we met you in Hungary at the Integral European Conference, and down in Mexico on an amazing performing arts conference. So they've manifested in different festivals.
Mm-hmm. So we are in March, from March 14th through the 21st, we are offering a Cultivate week-long retreat at Cocoon, Portugal, on a farm retreat center on the southwest coast of Portugal, where every morning we're going to have Cultivate creative practice sessions. First meditation in the morning, and then Cultivate creative practice sessions to really exercise the multidimensionality of creative practice. And then there's a lot of space for people to rest, dream, explore, work on a specific project if they want to, and then a more yin practice in the evening. And then also some fun social stuff at night, like maybe some kind of sharing and feedback sessions, or stargazing, or
sounds fun. Okay. we probably better wrap this up now. It's kind of late here, and I'm getting tired. This has been fun and creative, which I guess is the point, right?
Yeah.
Anything we sort of haven't discussed that you feel like a burning passion to talk about before we wrap up?
We just love talking about this with you. Thank you so much for, you're such a force in the world. And I know that the people who may be listening to you inside of these podcasts are tremendous forces in the world. And we're so happy to be in conversation with you and to kind of be on the same or similar path in this world, doing this work. And we just love to see, what comes from here and who we get to connect with. And
well, luckily, I forgot to press record, so we are going to have to do this a third time.
Oh my gosh, you just scared me.
This was too good to be. We got it.
Had to check. Yeah, I would just add that for any of you who are listening, if anything we've said strikes a chord, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to have you in Portugal. We'd love to talk to you about it if you're interested. And we'd also just love to talk embodiment, creativity, art, and life. So reach out, don't hesitate. And thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah,
no, pleasure. And also do check out Brooke's poetry. Brooke is the poet laureate of the Embodiment Conference, and we'll also be helping out with the Trauma Conference that Corinne Bell's been running as well. So you might get to see Brooke there. I always recommend this nice video of yours, Brooke. What's the really fancy, pleasant one of you outside with the lovely poem?
It's called Break. It's on YouTube. It's called Break. My channel is Brooke McNamara Poetry.
And in terms of websites, say the websites again for this event that you do as well.
You can find it by going to brookemcnamara.com, and if you scroll down on the homepage, there's a Cultivate Retreat image, and you can click on that.
There it is. There's got like wine and good food on the table there.
Yeah, farm to table food.
It looks pleasant. Portugal.
Yeah.
In Portugal. Good. And Lauren, I'm going to choose you to do the final message. So,
okay.
Oh no. You caught me with a lack of words. Like I got nothing. I just send you love. I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and it's been so fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.